Hello there. Parliament is about to authorise some nasty sweeping new powers for compliance authorities that will further erode our freedoms. This new energy bill that will shortly receive royal assent will give the authorities the power to enter your home to check that you have complied with net zero energy laws. And they will be empowered to use reasonable force to do so if they have a warrant. So one assumes they could also enter your home with a warrant to forcibly fit a smart meter if you don't have a compliant one fitted and operating. And it's not just about smart meters. And this is where the conspiracy theory really comes alive, because the bill also talks about energy smart appliances. These energy smart appliances are your smart washing machine, your smart fridge, and your smart freezer, for example. And the bill explains these as an appliance which is capable of adjusting the immediate or future flow of electricity into or out of itself or another appliance in response to a load control signal, and includes any software or other systems which enable or facilitate the adjustment to be made in response to the signal. That's right, we knew it was coming, but here it is just about to become law. An external authority can send out what's called a load control signal to switch off non-essential items in your home to deal with a spike in demand. And if your fridge is not smart, you may be required to plug it into a smart controlling device that you then plug into the wall socket. Then you have a smart fridge. And this same technology will also be fitted to car charging terminals with an added touch. If your car has a healthy battery charge and electricity needs to be diverted to the local hospital, for example, then your car, along with many others, will be discharged to supply it. Smart, eh? And according to the list in the bill, the sorts of appliances we're talking about is fridges and freezers, dishwashers, washing machines and dryers, heating and air conditioning. And the authorities can enter your home using reasonable force should they believe you are not compliant. On top of that, you can be fined up to 15 grand, or even go to prison for a year if you don't comply. They will even have the powers of search and seizure. Now, all these smart devices will presumably be talking to the main load controller, telling it that it is switched on and operating correctly, and sending messages to confirm it has, in fact, switched off or back on again when ordered to do so. And further, one suspects that this will be tested at regular intervals. So if the smart bit of the device fails, or you disconnect or damage that bit of the appliance for any reason, the load controller will know, probably triggering an email for you to check it out. And that could be the thing that in the end triggers a non-compliance enforcement visit from the authorities. Net zero really is becoming a control grid. And once the local authorities that will be exercising these powers get going, you just know they'll come up with even more excuses to increase the scope of those laws. How many other excuses will they find to enter your home using reasonable force? Now, there's also another new net zero concept that you may be unaware of, and that is the heat network zones. And according to heatnetwork.zone, heat network zoning is an approach proposed by the UK Government Department for Energy, Security and Net Zero to identify and designate areas of England where technical analysis shows heat networks to be the lowest cost means of decarbonising heat supply. So you may not even end up having a choice about how you heat your home. A heat network is a system of underground, insulated pipes that distribute heat to customers' buildings from a central, low-carbon heat source, instead of requiring a gas boiler within their building. Heat network customers receive low-carbon heat as hot water via the pipe system. This heat is then used to generate space heating and domestic hot water. And it's actually being trialled in 28 cities across England, with the heat sources themselves including energy from waste facilities and large heat pumps that concentrate energy from rivers, from the ground, or even from water within disused mine workings. And qualifying businesses and not-for-profit organisations will have to audit themselves under the Mandatory Energy Savings Opportunities Schemes, or ESOS, every 4 years to work out how they can reduce energy use further and reduce emissions. But for some reason the public sector is not covered by this. All getting rather dystopian, isn't it? Now this bill is ginormously long and very difficult to read, so it will be easy for the local authorities involved to run rings round us with this. Now it is quite surprising that the government is going down this reasonable force route, because they were the ones that stopped the forcible installation of prepaid meters, something that was exclusively limited to the poor and vulnerable. And when the energy prices started to rocket due to the fallout of the Ukraine situation, the energy companies were getting warrants by the bucket load to enter people's houses using reasonable force if required to fit prepayment meters. And this really kicked up a stink after it emerged that 94,000 prepayment meters were forcibly installed in 2022. And the public and political outcry forced those companies to ban enforced prepayment meter installations earlier this year. Now, again earlier this year, it was reported that energy suppliers were finding it ever harder to meet smart meter targets. And the government wants 80% of homes to have a smart meter by the end of 2025, with the Mail reporting in June. But energy suppliers have warned that they have now exhausted the low-hanging fruit of households who want to use the devices, making it difficult to meet this deadline, according to a report today from the National Audit Office. So the energy providers want the power to replace old meters with smart meters when the old one breaks down or gets to the end of its life. Something I think that would be easy to do given the wide scope of this energy bill. And it may even be hidden in there already. Now, when this Act gets royal assent in the very near future, it won't all come into force in one go. A few bits come into force immediately, and then a few more 2 months after that, with the rest being brought in by statutory instrument later on down the line. But interestingly, one part that is brought in on day one is the widening of the scope of the use of the Civil Nuclear Constabulary in the form of provision of assistance to other forces. And another clause that will come into force later on down the line widens the scope further in providing additional police services for the protection of places, persons and materials. Something that makes me suspicious about the future of nuclear power in the UK.